I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with so liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous. When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been. So great was the extent of, nor were there any seafood. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the road. That night, by the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had been. An intervening valley setting it out in sharp. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon, I was awake in a cold such vision, and in the glow of the moon, without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, picking up my pack, I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mountain, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternity. Through my terror and of Satan's hideous, as the moon climbed higher in the sky, ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rock, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object, an object that gleamed whitely. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a closer scrutiny filled. For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscription The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the... It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size. I think that these things were, though the creatures were shown disporting like or paying homage at some monarch of their faces and forms for the mere remembrance may grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesque, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing polyphemus-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff. I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to see. I have at any rate, I know that I heard. When I came out of the shadows, brought thither by the... In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish. But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press. It is at night. I tried morph, but the drug has given only so now I am to end it all. Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever do I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering. Worship, I dream of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is, I hear. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window!